you've ever wanted to tiny live, take it from someone who learned the hard way, because we got an RV to tiny live in temporarily to move across country, knowing we were going to sell it down the line to put towards a house, which is what we're doing right now. It depreciated over 80% in 2 years. Between we got kicked out initially of our home state because of zoning laws that we had no idea about, to just in general how difficult it is to live in one that's not talked about enough, to right now the whole 80% depreciation, not to mention we know property taxes that no one told us about.
Her story is not the exception. It's the pattern nobody on Instagram was showing while the movement was going viral. A traditional home in America appreciates 3 to 5% a year. A tiny home on wheels depreciates like a used RV.
After just 3 years, expect to lose 30% of the original value. And after 10 years, you'll be down 62%. With most governments classifying them as RVs, zoning's gonna be a real headache.
The average tiny home now runs $300 to $400 per square foot to build. A standard house is closer to $150 to $200. A kitchen, a bathroom, and a full electrical and plumbing system cost about the same regardless of the size of the house they go into. In a normal house, that cost spreads out across a lot of open floor space. In a tiny home, it never gets that chance. Buyers end up paying almost double the rate for a fraction of the space, in a structure built to lose value instead of gain it. So the obvious follow-up is why anyone is signing up for this at all.
Everyone should be really insulted that tiny homes is a trend just because we can't buy houses that are decent sizes anymore. Like, they're trying to sell us tiny houses and be like, look at how cute it is to have this tiny little house. It's really trendy right now. Our parents used to joke that if you f***ed up enough in life, you would end up in a van by the river. And now a lot of people buy vans to go travel the US because they can't afford a home. And that's like a goal for them. Like, a lot of people can't afford a van by the river.
She's naming what industry surveys have been quietly confirming for 3 years. Around 3 out of 4 Americans say they'd consider a tiny home. And the top reason isn't lifestyle, it's affordability. Reason number 2 is that a traditional home just isn't reachable anymore. The average American house crossed $512,000 in 2025. Somewhere in that climb, the tiny home stopped being marketed as a lifestyle upgrade and became the only door still open for a lot of buyers. And the demographic being pushed through that door is very specific. Industry data from 2026 shows tiny home owners are 77% women, and 42% of them earn between $20,000 and $40,000 a year. Most pay in cash by liquidating savings or take out personal loans and RV loans at rates way above a normal mortgage. That means the people being sold the loudest promise of financial freedom are also the ones with the smallest cushion when the math turns against them.
I live in a tiny home, and here are 5 reasons why I hate it. Number 1, since it's only 399 square feet, I hear every single noise that goes on outside. So if a tiny tree branch falls, I hear it, and it sounds like it's in the house. Number 2 is the water heater. My shower literally only gets hot for like 5 minutes. After that, it's cold because it only fits such a small water heater. Number 3 is the AC. So I have 2 mini splits, one in the downstairs bedroom and then one in the living room area right by the staircase. And I'm a hot sleeper, so I would have wished that I would have gotten the other mini split inside of the loft area where I'm sleeping, because I have to have a fan directly on me. Number 4 is it took me forever to figure out how I could get Wi-Fi inside of my house, because I was using my parents' Wi-Fi, and since the top of the roof is metal, it was very hard to share the Wi-Fi.
None of that lands on a floor plan. It lands somewhere around month 8, once the aesthetic wears off and the house is just where you live now. And those are all problems one person can work around. 2 people living in the same 300 square feet start running into different math entirely.
I think one of my biggest regrets venturing into this tiny house lifestyle of mine was that when I built my first tiny house in 2019 and moved into that in 2020, I didn't really think too much about how that would impact my social life, because I built a very tiny house, 14 square meters, and it was off-grid at the same time. It was always this practical issue of having people over, and it was not as much a problem for the guests. It was more like a problem for me, because I wanted to be a good host, and it was just difficult to fit everyone into this small house. So I didn't throw any birthday parties, and I didn't throw any parties altogether. And I in a way just isolated myself, because of that living situation. And then one day I just realized, wow, I have designed people out of my life due to my house.
That's the regret that shows up in almost every long-term owner interview after year 3. And it's what forces the question this whole conversation has been circling. If the small space is the problem, why do some people move in and love it?
If this is the first time you're seeing my face, my name is Misty, and I transitioned from a traditional home to a tiny home this year, and I'm going to talk about one reason that I feel like I made a major mistake. And while I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to sit here and have my cold brew coffee out on my front porch. Now back to the reason why I think I made a major mistake. And it's probably not what you're thinking. The one thing that I feel like I failed in is not doing this sooner. I mean, seriously, not doing this sooner, not downsizing and getting rid of all of the needless things and stuff in my life, and, you know, creating a smaller space for me to thrive. I really feel like I'm thriving in this, and there is not a day that has gone by in the almost 2 months that I have moved in that I feel like I made a mistake.
Misty is not lying. She moved in 2 months ago. She's happy, and she probably still will be a year from now. The reason has nothing to do with the house being magic. It's that her situation lines up with what a tiny home is actually good at. She lives alone, doesn't own a lot of stuff, and she's in Texas where a mild climate hides a lot of insulation shortcuts. There are no kids in the picture, and she's not counting on the house to appreciate into a retirement asset down the road. She's using the structure the exact way it was designed to be used. Which flips the whole story. The problem was never that tiny homes are bad. It's that a 300 square foot structure is being sold as the answer to problems it was never designed to solve. And the moment a buyer's real situation doesn't match Misty's, everything the movement promised starts breaking at once.
I'm a mom of 2 and I live in a tiny home, and these are things that I hate in my tiny home. First thing is, we never thought about where to put a trash can. So, yeah, that's horrible. The next thing that I hate is how small our sink is, and that we don't have a dishwasher. Okay. The next thing that I hate is having to do laundry at family members' houses because we don't have a washer and dryer. So if I were to build a tiny home again, I would definitely make a spot for a washer and dryer, even if that's outside. I know a lot of people are probably curious on our tiny home. Me and my husband literally built this with our 2 hands, and I love our tiny home. I brought both our kids home, but of course there's just little things that just like, why didn't we think of? I'm not gonna have to worry about that for too long because we're actually building a house, and it's like an actual house, like a real house, like a big one.
She loves the house, but still leaving. Because the same 400 square feet that fit 2 people fits 4 people terribly. And every fix is expensive. Building storage stairs during construction runs about $800. Retrofitting them after you've moved in runs closer to $3,500. Adding proper ventilation runs $600 during the build and $1,800 later. Every mistake in a tiny home compounds, and most of the mistakes only show up once you're already living inside them, which is before the moisture problem starts.
The worst mistake that you can make when living in a shed house is not thinking about ventilation. Behind me is our old converted shed temporary house. I do not miss that thing at all. Was it an adventure? Yes. Would I do it again? Hell to the no. Unless I had to, I guess. I don't know. Usually they're a very small space. Air really needs to be moving because it can cause a lot of things that you don't think about. A lot of these things, they don't have vapor barriers in them. Very tiny space, a lot of moisture builds up. With mold issues, it can cause respiratory issues. So I definitely advise putting a bunch of windows, and I definitely suggest if you have a loft, using like a hole saw and making holes just to like keep that air moving.
2 adults exhale roughly a gallon of water into the air every day just by breathing. Add showers, cooking, and laundry. In a normal house, that moisture disperses across thousands of cubic feet. In a tiny home, it hits cold walls, condenses, and gets trapped behind drywall. If the insulation wasn't designed properly from day one, mold grows inside walls within a year. Owners report respiratory issues they never had before they moved in. And the sanitation problem most owners don't fully understand until they've lived through a winter. Most tiny homes rely on composting toilets because connecting to municipal sewer is impossible, and a septic tank destroys the affordability case. The solids bucket has to be manually emptied every 4 to 6 weeks. The urine container gets emptied every few days. In cold climates, those containers freeze and crack, spilling into the primary living space. When the exhaust fan loses power for any reason, the smell embeds into clothing and every soft surface in the house within hours, which is one more reason hosting friends stops being fun and eventually stops happening at all. So the question behind all of this is what happens when you finally want out?
I'm about to expose the entire tiny home market when it comes to doing that in a tiny RV or camper. All of this. The greed in this country is disgusting.
She's onto something real, but blaming greed lets the actual cause off the hook. A regular house has a huge pool of buyers, most of whom can finance the purchase with a 30-year mortgage. That's the pattern. The tiny home was never the problem. The problem is that a whole generation got priced out of a normal house, and the market handed them one small structure and asked it to solve everything at once. From affordability and zoning to family scaling, long-term ownership, retirement security, resale value, and room for the people in their lives. No 300 square foot box was ever going to carry all of that, but the movement sold it as if it could, and the buyers who trusted that promise are now discovering one by one that a house designed to make one person's life smaller can't be scaled up to hold everything a real life eventually asks of it. The workaround comes with its own bill, and it usually comes due somewhere between year 1 and year 3. For some owners, it shows up as mold behind the drywall. For others, it's a fight over which parent gets the loft that night, or a friend who stops calling because there's nowhere left to put them. By the time it arrives, the option to just walk away has already depreciated 60% along with the house.